All right, so I'm on Facebook, and a guy who I follow and I really like to follow, named Paul Joseph Watson, posted this post about this lady who had a kind of a rant against Black Lives Matter. And while I support Black Lives Matter in the sense that they want to fight against, police brutality and some of the other things, I don't really agree with Black Lives Matter because, again, it's just hashtagging and protesting things without really doing their due diligence with stuff. Okay, so I don't know. Anyway, but she was talking about an incident, and I'm posting a link to the video that I saw in the description below. But she talked about two incidents that happened pretty much back to back in the St. Louis area where two people died. One was a criminal who was up to no good, got a gun, shot at the police, and died. And then another was a young girl who was just in her room, victim of a stray bullet in a drive-by shooting, and she died. And Black Lives Matter decided to protest over the thug who got shot by the police. Now, I understand what her concern is, but again, we're still not addressing the problem. Okay, blacks are still under systematic oppression, and people don't understand what the effects of systematic oppression are. Like, you can't, like, redlining. For those that don't know, redlining is when it's one of those things of you see black people moving into a certain area, so you stop putting money into that area. Like, you stop giving out loans, you stop you stop supporting the infrastructure that's already there, and you kind of just let it dwindle and hope that the community takes it over, and then you walk out. Now, again, because whites hold the money, the resources, and the wealth, that's why you see good neighborhoods turn black and then become ghettos. It's because they take the money out and they sit here and say, okay, here, we're going to take all of the wealth and infrastructure, and then we're going to leave, and then you guys are here left for yourself, but you're not going to get money, you're not going to get infrastructure, you're not going to get support, you have to do it yourself. Oh, and by the way, you have to come to us for it, and we're not going to give it to you. So it's like, then people wonder why, ghettos form and crime skyrockets. It's like, well, you can't sit here and say, we're going to charge you to live in this house, we're going to charge you electric, gas, heating, and all that other stuff, but we're not going to give you jobs to pay for it, and then wonder why convenience stores get knocked over, gas stations get robbed, et cetera and so forth. But anyway, long story short, we're not addressing the actual problem of systematic racism. So it's going to keep happening until we do, right? And then there's also media hype. Okay, since blacks are under systematic oppression that no one wants to acknowledge, then the other things that go along with that, like black people are violent, being portrayed by the media, it doesn't get addressed. Well, here's the thing: when it comes to news, there's a saying that we pretty much all know: if it bleeds, it leads, right? Well, here's the thing. News won't be hyped up about the little girl because it wasn't violent enough. Therefore, Black Lives Matter protesters probably aren't going to hear that story. Meaning, it's a lot more epic if a guy has a shootout with the police versus some little girl's in her room playing with her dolls and a bullet comes through the window and strikes her in the chest or the head or however she died. I didn't read either article. I'm going off of what this lady said. But, more or less, she dies. So that's just oops, sorry, someone died of a drive-by. We don't really know what happens. Who cares? But hey, we have this story over here that looks pretty awesome because we have a black guy shooting out the police and blah, 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 blah. So that's going to get way more news than the little girl who died, playing with her dolls. But here's the thing about media perception, is that what you see is your take on reality. So when you sit here and you see, like if you're a Black Lives Matter person and you sit here and you see, okay, the news shot or the police shot another black man, then because of the passed down knowledge of your I won't say ancestors, but the generations before you, that whites constantly beat blacks for no reason, and then you have all the newsreels from the 60s and the 70s and the 50s of like the Jim Crow era. You have all that in your mind, and then reinforcement by you and your friends walking down the street being harassed. When you have all these things built up, then you're going to be on edge already and hypersensitive to the fact of, oh, they just killed one of us because we were standing there, because you've seen it and it's been reinforced. Now, in this case, and again, this is what I always talk about, black people look at race from a overarching standpoint, while whites look at race as incidents, which again, that's why racism is not going to get solved, because we're arguing two different points. But I'm going to move on with that. When the news sits here and shows you this guy shooting out the police, you're automatically going to think that he was unjustly done, which that may or may not be the case, but it is what it is. So when the news finally comes out that no, he was a gangbanger, a drug dealer, whatever, then you're kind of left with egg on your face, and you've done all these hashtags of Black Lives Matter, et cetera, and so forth, and and that's why whites don't really. I hate to say it, but that's why they don't really care. Is because, again, they go off of an incident. So when the incident says, this guy was selling drugs, he got caught, or I don't know what he was doing. Again, I'm just using that as an example. And he pulled out a gun and shot at the police. Well, they automatically go to, oh, well, he shot at the police, therefore he gets shot down, and that is completely justifiable. But again, like I've said before, to some other white folks who I was talking about issues like this with, is you have to ask yourself, why does in what position does someone think that shooting at the police is a good idea? At what mindset are they under? And again, it's systematic oppression. But again, don't want to fix the problem, you're gonna keep having these issues, right? Anyway, some other things she talked about was, she said, you black people are the most violent people I've ever seen in my life. And she said it in more foul language, but, whatever. Again, this is another side effect of watching too much television, and, television shapes your reality. And, that's what the rich white ruling elite want, is they want everyone watching television. And I have my own theories about, why television used to be over the airwaves, and now everything's going towards cable and digital, and now phones that were in the ground or had hard connections are now being transmitted via airwaves. But I won't go into all that, because that has to do with telecom and theory and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty boring unless you, again, know who the rich white ruling elite are and you know what their goals are. It would make perfect sense, but I won't go off into that. So anyway, she mentioned rioting for thugs. Good point. Again, missing systematic oppression. Because see, she's approaching it from the white standpoint of, this was an incident versus what were the conditions that this guy felt that shooting at the police was okay. And again, if we want to talk about the incident, I fully agree with her point. You were doing something wrong. You shot at the police officers. They took you out. That's how that goes. I'm just, I don't understand why, some people would have a problem with that, and I really don't think any rationally thinking person does. But again, we have to go with systematic oppression as to, why does someone think that shooting at the police is a good idea? Anyway. Oh, what else? I wrote some notes here, because she said a lot, and I wanted to address a lot, but I don't want to address too much. She talked about sending her own kid to jail. Now, I'll let you guys listen to all that, but she talked about sending her own kid to jail. But see, her kid was not like this other kid who was shooting at the police. Because see, her kid, she's like, me and your dad, we put you in this environment, we gave you everything you needed and then some, and then you still decided to go out there and be a thug and be in the streets and try to be cool with your friends, which is why we turned you into the police. My parents gave me the same ultimatum. So when it comes to her own kid, if he's in jail, that's his own fault. My parents said the same thing to me. It's like, hey, we've taught you right and wrong. We've taught you how to carry yourself, how to act and behave in public, and don't disappoint the family. So, if the cops come, if the cops come and arrest you, if you spend your one phone call on us, we'll give you our regards, but we ain't coming to get you. And that was one of the things that kept me out of the streets. It's just one of the things that I knew. It's like, well, when the cops come get me, my parents already told me that I'm on my own. Of course, once I got a little bit older, and my dad was like, hey, if you're ever if you're ever in a bind, don't feel bad to call me. But by then, I was already, I was dang near 18 years old, and I had already made the decision that I wasn't gonna be a criminal. So those kind of fell on deaf ears. But well, not really, but you know what I mean. Like I had already made the decision that I wasn't gonna be a thug and in jail, so I was good. But you know, anyway, so she also moved on to the point saying like, white people don't care about, you know, black violence because we're killing each other. And again, that goes back to the notion that, people don't care about things that don't happen to people that look like them. And again, that goes back to, like my police brutality in the canary in the coal mine. See, even though all of this behavior is in place and things are going on, it's eventually going to be turned on the white population. But again, they're beta testing stuff just on blacks, just to make sure that once they turn it on white people fully, it's already on white people. I mean, if you see a lot of white people who are like lower class, they're now over here sounding like a bunch of, NWA, black NWA fans in the early 90s, F the police, and we don't have to take this, and, I'm getting a gun, and, it's just like, yep, see, it's already started, but see, it's poor white, so see, it's still not a big issue because middle class don't view themselves as poor, even though they're, they have to work and they pretty much live paycheck to paycheck just like poor people do, but, again, like I tell people, people need to look at society like we're on a cruise ship and not like we're different countries. Like all we have to do is shut off our borders and we'll be exempt, or just not go over there and we'll be fine. It's like, no, we're like a cruise ship. If there's writing on the back of the cruise ship and you're at the front of the cruise ship, eventually the situation is going to reach the front of the cruise ship, or something's going to happen where the decisions that you make will be based on the incident at the back of the cruise ship that you were trying to ignore. But anyway, that's really all I got to say on that. I won't make this video too long. So yeah, check the video in the description below, and again, we're going to keep having these incidences of racial outbursts and racial outbreak. And they're dividing the black community with this because there's already been a push of all these blacks yelling at other blacks, and but again, it's a deep thing. I'm probably gonna have to do another extended video on it, like I did with I Can't Marry Carrie and Carly. So I'll probably do that later. But check out the video in the description below. And this is John from the Gen XY.